Welcome to Diet Starts Monday. I'm Michael Hewitt. I'm currently at 18% body fat, and I'm trying to cut my body fat down in half to 9%. But not today, because today I want to eat cake. And I can start on Monday. That's why it's called Diet Starts Monday. Because we've all procrastinated like motherfuckers and done that same shit. So, this is Diet Starts Monday, where we're going to talk about and track and show you the journey of how I go from 18% body fat to sub 10% body fat. But first, a couple words about the Dexa Scan. I want everything that I do to be as good as it possibly can be. I'm not interested in doing something if I'm going to be mediocre at it. So if I'm going to worry about building a body and what I'm eating, of course, even if I look a way that is satisfactory to me, I want the hard numbers that say, yeah, dude, you're fucking crushing it. You're elite. The general idea is that if you are 10% body fat, or less, that's elite. When we think about what makes up 10%, you're like, yeah, well, you know what? You got to see all the abs, see them all separated, see the lineal alba or whatever it's called, whatever Charles Baldwin used to talk about. See the serratus muscles and see, other little things. So from when coronavirus went down, middle of March to middle of May, I did that. I was a bloated whale at like 212, between like 212, 215, and then got down to between, like 192 was like the lowest weight that I hit around that time. And I was like weighing in like 194, 196-ish, so about 20 pounds. And I was feeling in really good shape, and I was looking in the mirror, I was like, yeah, I can see all that. Ding, ding, ding. I must be close to 10. Maybe not actually 10, but like pretty close. And I went to go get a Dexa scan, and lo and behold, 18% body fat. Now, mind you, I was like, okay, you know what? I don't really care. I'm not gonna let what a test of body fat. I'm not going to let that affect how I feel about my body or the work that I've been doing or whatever. But because it is a number, it is a measurable thing, and it is something that I care about, pushing myself to achieve that, I was like, okay, well, so it sounds like I got some work to do. So I asked Rafi, who owns Composition ID in Arlington, if he would take 20 minutes and walk me through everything in my Dexa scan. What I learned is that there are a lot more important metrics than just your body fat. All kinds of metrics that indicate, hey, how healthy is your diet? Why I thought I was 11 and 12%, and that the mirror would tell me that, but I'm actually 18. What caused that? The other things to look out for that are really important on there, namely bone density, and then another great one, which I didn't even think about, that is purely influenced, according to Rafi, by diet. Also, the thing about a body fat test is that it is not, a hard and fast thing. It's a hard and fast thing for that test. So if you get, 18% on a Dexa scan and you get 9% on one of the bioelectrical impedance things, well, you know what? If it makes you feel better to think about the impedance one, then call that and then say that you're 9%. And then if you're trying to track progress or, really just track anything, be sure that you are going back to that same one. Because if you go, get a caliper test and an impedance test and a Dexa scan, you could be in the exact same shape, and it could be a shape that you're very proud of, but you could get a bunch of different numbers. And if you put a lot of stock into those numbers, like let's say you're really shooting for 10%, and Dexa scan tells you that you're not 10%, but the impedance thing says that you are, that you are 10%. Believe the impedance thing, unless you want to get 10% on a Dexa scan. What's more important than those hard and fast things is just the trend. Period, the end. And just how you feel about, don't let numbers dictate how you feel about your body. Let yourself and your feeling in your body, and, it's tough to establish a healthy relationship with body image in this day and age. So don't get hung up on those numbers. But if you are looking at the numbers, just be smart about it. Just treat it like, scientific method. I'm just a humble opera singer and meathead. I don't know much about the scientific method, but I know that it would say something about, hey dude, you're measuring two different tests. Why are you doing that? Measure one test. I like the Dexa Scan because it tells you the most amount of data points It seems most accurate. And I had a really great conversation with Rafi, the owner of Composition ID, which is what we're about to go into here.
Okay, what is going on with me?
Okay, so let's look back at the 3 last times you measured. May of 2018, September of 2019, and then the most recent one a couple of days ago, June 19th, 2020. You'll see that your body fat percentage went up from 16.5% in 2018, it went up by 1.4%, to 2019 to 17.9%, and then it went up only by 0.5% to 18.1 when we last measured. Even though your weight went down. Now, that's probably one of the first questions that arises with most people is, how can my body fat have gone down when my weight went down too? And the most common answer for that is because while you may have lost fat, which in your case you actually didn't, when you compare your first scan on May 24th, 2018, you had 34.5 pounds of fat on your body. And your last scan a couple of days ago, you had 36.2 pounds of fat. So
wow.
You had gained 1.7 pounds of fat in the past little over 2 years. But here's the big one. You had lost almost 12 fat pounds of lean muscle.
Okay, so Rafi, the way that I have, at least that I thought was the an acceptable way and somewhat reliable way to measure body fat is by just using the mirror, and especially like looking at the composition of your abs, or really like how much muscle and definition you can see there. So I hope you won't mind. Look, this is September, right?
Okay.
This is 17% or whatever in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
This is right now, where apparently I have more body fat and significantly less muscle than I did here, and still more body fat and less muscle than I did here. How is that possible?
Okay, so firstly, I got to say that you're genetically very gifted to be able to show abs at 18%, because typically, again, this is for the general population, typically your upper abs show right around 17 to 17.5%. Middle abs for most people show in that 15 to 14, and to actually see lower abs, which we are seeing to an extent with you in today's picture, that's down into the 11%. And the fact that you're showing at 18%, God bless you, man. I don't know, it's something, you are genetically a gifted human being.
Hey.
And it's just that it also means that a couple of things. It also means that your body tends not to store fat in your abdominal area.
Okay.
Everybody has a sort of genetic tendency to store fat in certain parts of their body. Usually for women, it's the hips. Usually for men, it's the lats, that back fat, or the abdominal area. For you, it's definitely not the abdominal area, which is accounting for the fact that visually, you don't look like 18%. And I agree with you 100%. Visually, you do not look like 18. Visually, you look like 13, maybe 14.
Cool. So I guess then my question is where did that, where did the extra fat get stored? Can we look at that on there?
Yeah. Okay. So if you look,
how can we use what we got here? How can we use what's on the scan to explain what you just explained?
Yeah. So if you go to that top of page 1 where it says composition enhanced analysis, no, same page. Yeah, enhanced analysis. That page we were on.
Where's that? Is that one?
Back to the first page.
That one.
Yeah.
Okay, enhanced analysis. There we go.
Yeah. So you'll see that your android, which is your abdominal fat, is 16.6. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Your hip fat is 16.9. Your arm fat is 15.5. Legs 20.2. Trunk 17.4. So that's the distribution of fat on your body. You only have 2.1 pounds of fat in your abdominal area. That's the lowest in your area. So that kind of breaks it down for you.
Okay. So really, I guess.
Let me give you a personal example. I scanned myself yesterday, and I weigh now 198.9. It's probably the lowest I've been in a long time. When I was 215 in weight, and I had about 13% body fat, I did not look as lean as I did yesterday when I scanned myself at 198 pounds and 15% body fat.
Okay.
I was leaner at 215 because I had so much more muscle mass.
All right. Yes. Okay. Then let's talk about what you were pointing out to me yesterday, which is just basically about that. Can we just talk about like how that affects everything, and also bone density, anything related? What's my next page? Where should I go for you?
So next page is your bone density page, which in your case has always been extremely high, right there. As you can see from that dot at the top of the blue charts, you're basically even above the best possible result.
Cool.
So your result is 1.5. You can't get better than that. And bone density, you can sustain that result for the rest of your life, basically, as long as you can continue stressing your skeletal structure through strength training. So that's probably
cool.
Yeah, that's a great result.
So, okay, then regarding muscle mass and muscle distribution, like,
okay,
if basically the way to look the best and also to have increased bone density and et cetera is to have the most amount of muscle, What are you seeing regarding my like trends in muscle mass?
Yeah, so trends in muscle mass, you can see that, for example, your trunk, which remember, your trunk is your torso. So it's a combination of three muscle groups together. It's a combination of chest plus shoulders plus
Back.
chest plus back. You can see in your trunk area between May of 2018 and a couple of days ago, you've lost on your right side almost 5 pounds of muscle, from 40.1 to 35.3 on the right side,
Wow.
and on the left side a little bit less, 3 pounds. So you've lost, some substantial lean muscle mass in your upper body, but overall, because your weight has gone down, you look leaner because of the reduced weight.
Okay.
In your legs, you've lost also about the same, almost 3 pounds on one side and about 2 pounds on the only part that's shown improvement is your arms. Your arms have actually gone up in muscle mass.
That is really interesting. I feel like I have not lost very much strength, if any.
Yeah, and a lot of times people will also, it's a common misconception that if you necessarily lose muscle mass, you necessarily lose strength. Not always. Two things to account for. Remember, number one, your muscle has muscle memory. So if you're used to dumbbell pressing 85-pound dumbbells for 12 to 14 reps on the flat bench, your muscles are used to that. They've been doing it for year in and year out. You lose 2 or 3 pounds in your upper body area, and that isn't going to change much. That's number one. Number two, you could be genetically a strong guy. I've seen guys in the gym that are 150, 155 pounds that are doing 110-pound dumbbells. And last time I did that, I almost busted a hernia. So, I mean,
don't do that.
So a lot of factors. Now, it's only when you've lost a lot of muscle mass. I mean, that muscle memory doesn't really matter. If you've lost, 15, 18, 20 pounds of muscle mass, you will lose strength. But if you've lost in that 7, 8 to 10 pounds of muscle mass, your muscle memory is a stronger factor than the actual muscle mass loss.
Is for strength. And then you also still have, tell me if this is correct, if in a case like say mine, your muscles maintain the shape and for the most part like the density that you get when you add more muscle mass that you earn by having that. And so then even if you do lose muscle mass, you retain that improved composition.
Yeah, so it's not like you're actually building a brand new muscle. You're just sort of reinvigorating a muscle that was built before and has the memory of getting to where it was before.
Okay. And so would that explain, like, let's just say, so I added a bunch of muscle in 2018, and I got to what I think is, like one of my best sort of walking around look, whatever you want to call it. Through the results of that effort, I got this changed look that only comes with adding muscle. In the 2 years since then, I have lost muscle and added fat and basically just sort of shrunk down, but I have maintained that muscle shape. So does that make sense? And that would be a reason why I'm seeing this sort of, why I'm like, wow, how come this 18% looks the way that it does? Does that make sense?
And think about it, your 18.1% is only 1.6% more than it was at 16.5. So we're not talking you gained 5, 6, 7% muscle. You gained 1.5% spread out over your whole body. So it's really minimal.
Oh, see, there we go. You just distilled down exactly my question. It's basically that the fat distribution has only happened, it's just like sort of redistributed in my lower body.
Right. I mean, it's only a 1.6% increase. It's not much.
Okay. Wow, that just like literally clicked everything that I was wondering about with these numbers into place. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this real quick. This estimated visceral adipose tissue?
Yeah, so there are two indicators on your Dexa report that indicate that a person's diet is pretty much on point or largely on point. The first is if your abdominal fat percentage is lower than your overall fat percentage. And I think your abdominal fat percentage was close to it. It was about the same. It was 16, was it?
Where do we see that?
Right there. So your ab fat 16.6, your overall fat is 16.6, and your overall fat was 80. Yeah, so your abdominal fat is lower than your overall body fat.
Cool.
Usually, with people whose diet isn't that good, that abdominal fat number is the highest percentage out of all the regions above and below it.
Okay. Oh, so you know what? So that would explain why right here I had, if I may, that would explain why I had shittier abs. Yeah. But also you could track that then using some of that information. You could say, well, if my training was the same, my sleep recovery, my lifestyle was the same, my diet was not as good. Just the quality, not even calories or macros or what have you, just the quality of food that I'm eating.
Yeah. And then if you look at so that's the first indicator, is the fact that your abdominal or android fat percentage number is lower than the other regions of your body in terms of percentage, and lower, most important, lower than your total. The second one is the visceral fat, that page we were on a minute ago, and that is also a key indicator of a largely healthy diet. Now, when I say healthy, I usually mean in terms of selection of the dietary items that you're eating. I don't mean your calorie intake. High or low calorie is a different matter. High or low protein is a different matter. But the items that you're choosing to eat are generally healthy, and that reflects in the fact that your visceral fat is at 0.03. So it's almost non-existent. And remember, this is a fat that surrounds your vital organs deep inside your abdominal cavity, and because of its proximity to those vital organs, has possible health repercussions if there was a lot of it, and if you carried a lot of it for an extended period of time. and you almost have none of it, which means also that the abdominal fat that you do have is all subcutaneous or surface fat and none of the deep fat.
Okay, that is awesome. So look, on a Dexa scan, what are like the 2 to 3 most important things, important markers for just overall health?
Your overall body fat percentage, for sure.
Okay.
And again, that depending on your age, that number has a different significance if you're 25, 35, 45, or 55. Because obviously, as you get older, you're expected to have a little more body fat than if you were in your 20s. So body fat percentage relative to your age group, that's number one. Number two, your visceral fat obviously is very important. Stuff like sugar intake, a lot of drinking of alcohol are 2 key factors that negatively affect that number. And I would probably say a tie on the third between bone density. Most people who take a DEXA don't have a bone density issue because most people come to DEXAs are doing some sort of exercise, so they are
right. It pre-selects for smart, data-driven meatheads.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And then and then the muscle mass is important. The muscle mass, I think it's important to keep in mind one thing that we talked about when you came in, which is the difference between the sides. So when you look at your trunk has 2.6 pounds more lean muscle between your right trunk and your left trunk. So that's considered slightly above what's considered the normal range of difference. You're slightly in the bottom. You're in the bottom of the asymmetrical range. So you're just starting to show some asymmetry between right and left.
Would that explain this little curve?
No, that's just your spine, and that's compared to the hundreds of scans, thousands of scans I've seen. Actually, your spine's pretty straight.
Oh,
so yeah, so for some reason we don't know where it is, where that difference is, whether it's in your chest, whether it's in your back, whether in your shoulders, because all 3 of those muscle groups comprise the trunk. But there's a 2.6 pound difference between the sides. So I would keep my eye on that. If it doesn't change between now and next scan, I mean, if it doesn't improve, in other words, or increases, then you might want to start doing some isolation exercises for your right chest/back/shoulders to narrow that number down between the left side, the right side, and the left side. Because if it becomes a really big number in the 4, 5, and 6 pound difference range, which can come pretty easily. I tore my rotator cuff last year, and there was a period of time when right after I tore it, there was a 6.7 pound difference between the sides. And it's just, it throws you off and it increases the risk of future injury because now you're so overcompensating on one side or the other.
Right.
So keep your eye on that. And just right now, it's nothing to worry about. But right now, it's sort of like a number to watch for the future.
And so to what you just said, that keeping track of the difference in between limbs through a scan, through this sort of highlighted blue column here,
yep,
that's useful to see where you may or may not be overcompensating. So for somebody who's especially focused on either longevity or athletic performance, or just overall, they just want to be well-rounded, that's a great way to tell where your weaker spots in the chain are.
Yeah, but the thing is, I would caution in making a direct correlation between, for example, if you injured your shoulder, is the difference now as a result of that between the right and left side because of the shoulder itself or because another part of your body had tightened up? So that would take an actual therapist who's going to sit with you and make you go through a range of motion of exercises to see which muscle group is overcompensating. And sometimes it can manifest itself in very strange ways. You can hurt your upper body area because your hip flexors are tight. You can definitely hurt your calves or quadricep because your hip flexors are tight, and that's the hips. So there's nothing wrong with your quadricep, there's nothing wrong with your calves, but the hip flexors are affecting your range of motion when you squat, etc., and resulting in you overcompensating and therefore injury. So that takes somebody who's more specialized to identify where the source of the overcompensation is, rather than saying, here's the injury, so that must be the source.
Yeah. Wow. That's super useful. That's really cool. I'm so glad that I came in yesterday or whenever I came in. I think I'm going to stop recording. I don't think that I have any other questions for you. Do you have anything else that we didn't cover that you think like Gen Pop or most of the people who you see would be interested in hearing?
I would really, the things I see most of when people come in are, number one, people who make the mistake of relying on less accurate forms of body composition testing and making decisions based on inaccurate information and faulty data. For example, just to give one example, the scale that you stand on that supposedly sends electrical impulses through your heel and through this magical electrical impulse somehow tells you what your body fat is. Those are technologically useless, but some people do rely on them. And the problem is I've seen variations anywhere between 3%, which may not sound like much, but up to 16% difference. In fact, I had one of our clients come in one day. He was given this scale over Christmas. So he brought the scale in on January, and I stood on it just for demonstration purposes. And it gave me a certain number, and I got on the Dexa Scan machine right after that, and there was a 12.7% difference.
Wow.
In my body fat. Now imagine that you get on that scale, and it tells you you're 15% when you are actually 27%. You are going to make different decisions on your diet and exercise at 15 than at 27. At 15, you're doing pretty good. You may think that I may not have to change much, but at 27, some changes are in order. And that's where you get tricked into thinking you're something when you're not, and then therefore making decisions based on that. I would caution against that.
So if you are measuring your body fat for the purposes of anything other than aesthetics and tracking progress, you need to get a Dexa scan if you are going to use body fat as an assessment of what you should do for your health.
Yeah, a Dexa scan. I mean, hydrostatic weighing is also considered a pretty accurate form of measurement. Those are a lot harder to come by because obviously you need to go somewhere that has a pretty large pool that you can get into, and it's a little more of a hassle to take your clothes off, etc. So in terms of convenience and accuracy, nothing beats Dexa right now.
All right, so stay tuned for episode 2, where I'm going to go into the plan that I'm going to use to cut myself down to 9% body fat, build more muscle, like what he's talking about, because like obviously, look, muscle is the magic currency here. More important than how little body fat you have is how much muscle mass you have. And also how I plan to fix the imbalance issue that I am like skirting the edge of danger on. So, that starts Monday episode 2. That's what's going to be in it. Check it out.